What's up, guys? Blizzard Productions here, back with another video, and today it's Tier List Tuesday again. I know that I said it in last week's video that I would not be able to be posting Tier List Tuesdays for a while, and that it wouldn't be a every week type of thing, but I had enough time to go ahead and make this one. So I know this one is super long, so just grab some popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy it. Alright, so this is what the tier list looks like. First, we have packed their bags before the season even started, meaning that's the worst of the worst. They did terrible. They literally packed their bags before the season even started, and they just did not do good at one single game. The next, we have worse than expected, and worse than expected isn't going to be like the worst of the worst. That means that they did way worse than they should have. And then going above that is average, meaning that they were an average NFL team. They won about the same amount of games as people thought they would do and did about the same skill levels as everyone thought. Above that is above average, meaning that they are above average. They did actually pretty well, and they did better than everyone expected. And then above that is a super team, meaning like they did incredible and no one expected them to do good, but like they were a team that if you saw that your team was going against them, then you would be scared. First up, we have the Bears, and they were terrible this year. Their whole season, I think, was brutal, and if you're a fan of the Bears, I'm really sorry because I don't think that you watched them at all this season after, like, week 3 because they just were not good. Justin Fields, I know that he's a rookie and he's still learning, but he did not look good really at all. And just the whole team fell apart, and Matt Nagy was a terrible coach. Now we've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm going to put them in the above average category because they did do pretty good. I mean, I could put them in average because they did what people expected them to do, but I'm going to put them in above average because Tom Brady actually did very good with having top receivers out, and they went through a lot. I mean, they had Antonio Brown obviously leave with the deuces up, and then they had Chris Godwin, like one of their number one receivers, go down with the injury for the rest of the season. So all in all, they did pretty good and overcome pretty big injuries and pretty big losses. Now we've got the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm going to put that in worse than expected because they were worse than expected in my opinion. I expected them to do a little bit better, maybe not go to the playoffs, but they had a 7-10 record, which isn't actually that bad. It's also not the greatest. I feel like their team was capable probably winning about 9 or 10 games. Now we got the Seattle Seahawks, and they were definitely worse than expected. And I like saying that because I'm a 49ers fan, and I hate the Seahawks. But they could not get their stuff together. I get that they beat us both times they went against us, but still, besides that, they really had no upside to this season. They just did not look good. Now I'm not sure how the future is going to be with Russell Wilson as their quarterback and if Pete Carroll is going to be their coach. But all in all, Seahawks worse than expected. Now we got the Detroit Lions, and they're definitely a pack their bag because, I mean, I actually kind of like them because they just were falling in hard times. And I do like Dan Campbell a lot. I think that he can do really good and make this Lions team way better and a winning team. But just this season was not good. And they had not won a game until the final few weeks. And so Jared Goff, I'm sorry, but I don't think that he should be your quarterback. And you got rid of Matthew Stafford, and look at what he did as soon as you got rid of him. Won a Super Bowl, so that says also a lot. Now we've got the Dallas Cowboys, and they did way better than people thought. Dak Prescott being back definitely helped this team, but also they couldn't get past the 49ers in the first round of the playoffs, and people were thinking that they were going to go to the Super Bowl, which, if you look at their stats, they actually were 6-0 against their own division, but that's also the NFC least, so they don't add the best teams, and then they were 6-5 against any teams outside of their division, so that says quite a bit. Now we've got the Washington football team, which now is the Washington Commanders, which I think that's the lamest name. But anyways, they did worse than expected. Taylor Heineke, I feel like he could have done better, and I actually kind of like him, but I know a lot of people, especially Washington fans, do not like him, but they did definitely worse than expected. I expected them to actually have a winning record. Now we've got the Arizona Cardinals, and they really reminded me of the Steelers of 2020 because they were terrible. They're worse than expected because they started off 7-0, and then they went in and went against the Packers. And then when they went against the Packers, they lost, and that's when they had that miscue with the wide receiver. But anyways, all in all, they did not do good. Kyler Murray, not quite sure what he's trying to do now. It seems like he's trying to get out of Arizona or try and get a bigger contract. Not quite sure why he's doing that because he's not the best of the best quarterbacks. And not sure what their future is going to look like. But the Cardinals just really reminded me of the Steelers because they started off super good and ended really poorly. Now the Eagles, and they are above average, that's for sure. They went to the playoffs in the middle of a rebuild, and that's saying quite a bit because in the middle of rebuilds, it is pretty hard unless you are like a super team. So the Philadelphia Eagles actually really impressed me, especially coming off of the season they had last year. I think Jalen Hurts will really help this team and make them get into the playoffs and possibly get close to the Super Bowl or even in the Super Bowl. Now we've got the Miami Dolphins, and this one's a little hard because I could put this team into the above average category, but I think that they deserve to be in just the plain average category because it's how they have been, kind of, where they go and they have a winning record, but they don't make it to the playoffs and they miss it by just like one game. And they did decent this year. I mean, they had a stretch of just keep on winning games, and they were really close to going to the playoffs, which no one thought at the beginning of the year was going to happen. But all in all, I think that they need a new quarterback that can actually throw the ball a little better and have more experience. But I think that this team has a good future, especially with having Jalen Waddle on there. I think that there's a future ahead of this team that is really bright. Now we've got the New England Patriots, and they were definitely above average. They're in the middle of a semi-rebuild, and with Mac Jones being their quarterback, I did not expect him to get anywhere because he's a rookie quarterback. But he went ahead and took them to the playoffs, and they used him in every single game. And I'm actually pretty proud of him because I did not expect that out of a rookie, and I think that he deserves a lot more credit. And I get that they lost so bad against the Bills, but there's work that needs to be done. But I think that this team is close to being another super team. Now we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they did what a lot of us, I think, expected, which is they packed their bags before the season even started. They did not do good whatsoever, and if you saw this team that you were going against, you would think that it would be a pretty good win. The games that the Jaguars did win, though, were super big games that the other team had to win. There's the Bills game, and then they knocked the Colts out of the playoffs. Who would have thought that would have happened? But just they had a really bad coach, Urban Myers, that just walked off on them halfway through, or I shouldn't say walked off. He got fired halfway through the season. So they did go through a lot, and I think that they could have a future ahead of them. Moving on, we had the Minnesota Vikings, and they were an average team. They did what I expected. They did what a lot of people expected. They went 8-9, didn't go to the playoffs, and I think that this team, they have Justin Jefferson on that team, you know, the one that's famous for doing the gritty, but I think that they could win games in the future. Moving on, we had the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they were an average team this year. They somehow made it into the playoffs because of a series of events such as like the Colts losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars and other crazy events. They almost didn't make it in because of the Chargers and the Raiders game almost tying, but it didn't tie and the Chargers got knocked out. So the Steelers got in and then they got knocked out in the first round. But I think this was Ben Roethlisberger's last year and he did decent. I'm not sure why people like him so much. He's an average quarterback, but still, I think he probably is going to the Hall of Fame. But all in all, Steelers, average team. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers, and they're going to be our first super team. They were a really well put together team this year, but if Aaron Rodgers leaves this season, I think that the Packers are going to have a little bit of trouble because if they lose Aaron Rodgers, they have to go with Jordan Love, I think. And Jordan Love does not look ready for the NFL yet. So we'll see how that all plays out. But this year, the Green Bay Packers did really good, had the best record in the NFC, and they lost to the Niners. But I think if they beat the Niners, they would have gone all the way and beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl. Now we've got the Cleveland Browns, and this is probably one of the most disappointing teams. They were definitely worse than expected. After the 2020 season, last season, they were looking like they could go all the way to the Super Bowl this season if they just had some minor tweaks to that roster, but they did terrible. I mean, they fell apart in this season, and I'm not quite sure what happened, and I'm not sure if Baker Mayfield will even be the Browns' starting QB next season. Now we've got the Las Vegas Raiders, and they were an average football team. They went through a lot this season, but they did go to the playoffs and were knocked out in the first round against the Cincinnati Bengals. But that was a really good game, and it came down to the very final play of the game when Derek Carr threw that interception in his own red zone. And if they had scored there, they would have won. But still, they went through a lot with the Henry Ruggs situation and the cornerback situation with the DUI and all that. Now we've got the Buffalo Bills, and they were... I'm going to put them in the super team. They could be above average, but I'm putting them in the super team. And here's the reason. They were so close to beating the Chiefs, but it just didn't work out. They gave 13 seconds. That was it. 13 seconds to Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes was lucky to go ahead and drive down the field with those 13 seconds, get the game-tying field goal, and then go into overtime and win. But if the Bills had beat the Chiefs, I think they would have gone to the Super Bowl. I think that they would have beat Cincinnati. And they are a super team. I think that they have found a team that they can stay with for a while. Moving on, we have the Baltimore Ravens. And they were an average team this year. They had quarterback issues with Lamar Jackson and him getting hurt and being out half the season. But I think that they also have a pretty reliable backup quarterback named Tyler Huntley. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he's in the near future a starter, maybe not for the Ravens, but probably for a different team because he actually looked pretty decent. But the Ravens finished with the losing record and were dead last in their division, and so that's not good at all. So they were an average team. But talking about a quarterback situation, we have the New Orleans Saints, and they were also an average team because Taysom Hill, not a good quarterback in my opinion. I think that the Saints should get rid of him. Saints are not the same without Drew Brees, but I do have to give it to them. They almost went into the playoffs. If the Niners had lost their game, because the Saints did win their last game against Atlanta and were about to go to the playoffs, but the Niners ended up winning, so we had a better record than them and went to the playoffs. But still, they were an average team. Next up, we had the Tennessee Titans, and I guess they're a super team. The reason why I'm putting them as a super team is because they had the best record in the AFC, so they got into the playoffs without doing the wild card. But with Derrick Henry being out, they were definitely a different team. And Ryan Tannehill, I'm not quite sure what his future is going to be like. I do not think that he is a really good quarterback, and I think that the Tennessee Titans should kind of start to look into having a better quarterback. But they did have the best record, like I said, in the AFC, so you can't really ask for more. So Tennessee Titans, I guess, are a super team. Next up, we have the New York Giants, and oh my goodness, they packed their bags before the season even started. They were terrible this season. They're probably one of the biggest disgraces in the NFL, and I know that's a big word to use against them, but really, they're a terrible team to watch. And Daniel Jones, terrible quarterback. They need to get rid of him. Their backup for the Giants was also terrible. Need to get rid of him. And Joe Judge, they already got rid of him, but he was a terrible coach as well. So this team is just a wreck. And I actually heard a interesting stat is that every team in the NFL has had a winning record at least 1 point in their season since 2017, except for the New York Giants. And I believe that so much because they are a terrible team. Now we've got the Indianapolis Colts, and I could put them in the average category, but I'm going to put them in above average because they did decent this year, but they just fell apart at the end of the year. That is for sure. And they had a big chance of going to the playoffs, but they lost to the worst team with the worst record in the NFL this season, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they got knocked out of the playoffs. I mean, the Jaguars had fans go into their stadium dressed up as clowns, and the Jaguars still beat the Colts. But still, Colts, they did pretty good, and I'm going to give them above average. Now we've got the Denver Broncos, and I think that they were worse than expected. They were 7-10 and finished last in their division. But they had Teddy Bridgewater. He had some good games, some bad, but then he got injured, and that did not look very good. And then the Broncos decided to trade Von Miller, their best defensive player, to the Rams. So I'm not quite sure what their thinking was behind that, because he was obviously really good. And so, all in all, I think that the Broncos were worse than everyone expected. Now we've got the New York Jets, and they packed their bags before the season even started. They had the second pick in the first round of the draft. They picked the quarterback, Zach Wilson, and he looked terrible. I get that he's a rookie and he has a lot of learning to do, but he just did not look good this season. And it's just kind of how the Jets season has gone for the past few years, I feel like. Now we've got the Los Angeles Chargers, and they were a above-average team. They were close to making the playoffs, and they missed it because they called that timeout for whatever reason against the Raiders in Week 18, because I think that if they had not called that timeout, I think that we would have seen them in the playoffs, and who knows what would have happened there. I think they would have been eliminated, but still, they would have gone to the playoffs. But the Los Angeles Chargers, I think that they have a good future ahead of them, and I'm excited to see what next season is going to look like for them. Now we've got the Kansas City Chiefs, and they are still a super team. I really am not a big fan of the Chiefs because I am a Niners fan, and they obviously beat us in the Super Bowl, but still, the Chiefs are a really good team, and I can't deny that. They have really good players. They have Tyreek Hill. They have Patrick Mahomes. They have Travis Kelce. They have Edward Helaire. They have multiple great players, and if they keep this roster, I think that we'll see them win at least 2 more Super Bowls in the next 5 years. Now we've got the Cincinnati Bengals, and they are no doubt a super team. Came very close to beating the Rams in the Super Bowl, but they just couldn't finish the job and lost. But they have a really good future ahead of them, I can already tell. They have the comeback player of the year, Joe Burrow, and he is an amazing quarterback, and that was just his second year in the NFL, and it looks like he is a veteran quarterback. And then they have Jamar Chase, the offensive rookie of the year, who is also really good. Now we've got the Houston Texans, and oh man, they packed their bags before the season even started. They, I think, found a QB that they should stick with, which is Davis Mills, and they started to have some ups towards the end of the season, beating some teams that I don't think anyone thought that they could beat. But still, Houston Texans, they packed their bags before the season even started. Now we've got the San Francisco 49ers, and this isn't me just being a fan. They are definitely a super team. At the beginning of the season, they did not look good at all, and I even told my grandpa at the beginning of the season, I said, wow, this team is going nowhere. They're going to have to do crazy renovations and redos to their roster in the offseason. But they turned that around quickly, and they went to the NFC Championship, nearly beat the Rams to go to the Super Bowl. But this team has a bright future ahead of them. All they need is a good quarterback, which I've heard that Tom Brady is talking about possibly going to Niners. I'm not sure. I wish that happened, and I hope that happens, but it sounds too good to be true. But still, 49ers are a super team. Now we've got the Los Angeles Rams, and they packed their bags before the season even started. No, I'm just messing around. They are definitely a super team. They just won the Super Bowl. They went all in. They got Matt Stafford, Odell Beckham Jr., and Von Miller. They are definitely a stacked team, no doubt about that. They deserved that Super Bowl win for sure. I'm going to wonder how they are going to be next year. I'm going to wonder if they are going to go back into playoffs. I think that they will, but I'm wondering if they'll go all the way to the Super Bowl again. But still, the Rams, did great this season and probably were the best super team there was. Last but not least, we had the Carolina Panthers, and they definitely packed their bags before the season even started. At the beginning of the season, they looked super good. I was actually super surprised. I thought that they could actually make it to the playoffs. But then they had problems with Sam Darnold, and then they had Cam Newton come back, who I thought was going to be some type of storybook type of thing and have him be back, because remember, he almost had an undefeated season with the Carolina Panthers, but that obviously did not work out. I'm not sure what the quarterback situation is going to be in the future for the Carolina Panthers, but all in all, they packed their bags before the season even started. And there you have it, the official Blizzard Productions NFL 2021-2022 season team rankings. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to like and subscribe. I know that it was a long video, but if you watch this whole video, that means a lot to me, because it means that you were entertained enough to watch me and watch the whole entire 20 minutes of a video and hopefully not get bored and thought that I had actually really good points. So, once again, thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and until next time.